Alright, good evening everybody, and welcome to another installment of Beer Time. Trying a little bit something different with the camera angle here, and we're also going to try something a little different regarding what we've got on the table today. We're actually going to try some cider out tonight. We've got one that's fairly common and one that's a little bit more esoteric, so let's dive right in. First off, we're going to start, you've probably seen this at the bar someplace. Fairly commonly found, I believe, if I'm remembering right, it's carried by the same distributor as Sam Adams. So if you can find Sam Adams, chances are pretty good you'll be able to find Angry Orchard. This is becoming to be one of the more common ciders in the area. I've had it before, and I gotta say, I think this is kind of the benchmark for how American ciders should taste. Now, this is a new format for them for me. I've noticed that they've started branching out into cans. So yes, it does come in pints, like this size here. Cans are starting to catch on now that craft beer is becoming popular, and it's easy to see why. You do have a slight upfront cost on actually canning the item, but cans conduct temperature a little easier, so they're quicker to cool, and also a little bit better overall. Now, a couple things about cider. In case you don't know, cider comes typically from apples. Here in the USA, cider was actually historically a lot more common than beer. But we'll get into that in a minute. In the meantime, good color on this, not a lot of head. Cheers. Oh, that's good. Real nice, this crisp apple finish. Actually, this is probably about the perfect time of the year for a good cider like this. Fits, the flavor profiles fit right into the time of the season with that apple goodness. Couple other interesting points, just kind of getting into the nitty-gritty of the beer. Most cider is right on the money for most beer. This particular example is 5% ABV. But completely different, not just flavor profile from beer as you'd expect coming from basically just pure apples, but also from the mouthfeel for it. The texture is a lot different than what you'd expect for beer. I just can't get enough of that. Not bad, but beer drinkers, you might find something a little bit different on there. Otherwise, though, very, very easy drinking beer. If you are new to cider, this is a great, great cider to come in on. Now, let's talk about some other things on here. Cider, as I mentioned, was more popular in the States historically than beer, up until about the American Civil War. Now, if you think about why that was, if you take a look at where the original 13 colonies were, especially up in the Northeast, Massachusetts, Delaware, and all that, not real big grain-producing states, and you need grain to make beer. More to the point, you need enough grain to make sure that you've got enough to make bread and food for everybody else, and that you can make beer with. What they did have in abundance, though, plenty of apples. And also, since most of the original colonists were from England, which is also another big cider-producing country, France being the second, they were able to transplant apple trees across the pond to the New World, and thus cider. It really wasn't until you had a massive influx of German immigrants to the United States that beer started becoming really popular. And even after, what really killed cider in the States was Prohibition. Because during Prohibition, obviously mainstream alcohol was just completely gone. It was underground for everything. And the problem that you had with that is that for centuries you had these strains of apples that were perfect for cider. They'd have high sugar content, high flavor, a lot of juice to them. Not exactly as good for eating, though. So during Prohibition, if you were a farmer that grew apples specifically for a cidery, you were SOL. So you'd have to change your whole crop over, and a whole bunch of apple strains died. That's actually one of the reasons why cider is so expensive these days here in the States. It's not because it's harder to produce than beer. It's actually a lot easier. I've made cider, and if I can make it, anybody else can. That might actually be a good topic for a video later on, but more on that later. Now, the reason it's so expensive is because if you're an apple farmer, your apples are getting top dollar if they're selling to places like Whole Foods, in the organic section for all that. You're not making a whole lot of money selling to a cidery, which kind of in a roundabout way brings us to the next cider that we've got on our list. What a lot of cideries are doing is that they're expanding with different fruit profiles. And I gotta say, I'm a big fan of doing this. I like experimentation with food, with flavor, and everything like that. This is Wyders Dry Raspberry. And this is actually going to be a new one for me. I've never had this one before. They do a pear cider that's remarkably good. A lot of good mouthfeel. I like that mellow pear flavor to it. Raspberry, though, that's going to be a little tartar, I am expecting. A little bit sharper on the palate. A couple other things here. According to this is about 4% alcohol by volume, so what I'd expect for this is probably a very good session cider. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with that term, a session beer is, think about it like a beer that you'd have during doing yard work, something that you could kind of pound down and it really wouldn't affect your judgment or your equilibrium after. So, by the way, you gotta like the Millennium Falcon bottle opener here. This one will push 0.5 past light speed. Alright, so, beautiful pink color for that. If you were having a breast cancer awareness event, that actually might be a good drink for that. Good clarity. Oh, that's good. So, very similar mouthfeel to the cider, which is to be expected. It is mostly fruit juice. Real nice tart raspberry flavor to that. The raspberry is really coming through on that. If I was looking at, basically pretty much most of the ingredients on this are going to be apples, but they've really done a good job of getting that raspberry flavor to come through, and that's absolutely fantastic. For you Wyders guys, I am a big fan of what you guys have done already. This is excellent. Now, when it comes down to pricing on this, I got these two at Bevmo. If there's a Bevmo in your area, odds are pretty good that they'll have a cider section. Cider's becoming real big, especially now that the gluten-free market has taken off. Why is that? Well, no gluten in these. Apples, raspberries, all that sort of stuff. So if you're celiac or if you have a gluten allergy and you want something that will fill the role of beer for you, cider's a great option. There are plenty of gluten-free beers out there, but in my opinion, it's always better to try something new, and that's what these suckers will do for you. Pricing-wise, this pint here ran me about $2 and change. This 40 ounce here ran me about, 22 ounce. This ran me about $3 and change, so $5-6 for the two of these, not too bad. I know for Orchard, I can get this stuff at Walmart for about, it's gone up recently, I can get it for about $8 and change for a 6-pack. For the Wyders, I can also get it, it used to be a little bit cheaper for their pear. This is the only place I've seen the raspberry. But I think it's about the same price for all that. Both wonderful. Again, your mileage may vary. And I would definitely recommend both to anybody. I have to say, cider's not for everyone. I know a lot of people don't like the fruitiness to it. Some people prefer a clean, even that bitterness profile to everything. But, For me, I'm equal opportunity. I like everything. And I like both of these. They're good. Until then, see you all later for next beer time. Have a good night. Stay safe. Drink responsibly.